Nobody learned the lesson from New York City's experience in the 70s. And they've been borrowing to cover deficits, which is an unsustainable course. And the banks have been party to that. Not that the banks are in and of themselves responsible for disciplining the political system. But when they whine and scream and complain, when there's a default, when it is inevitable, you have to wonder whether they didn't behave just like the politicians and look at today's profits and not worry about tomorrow's risks. And that's the problem that besets our American democracy at this point. Meaning your recurring revenues have to equal your recurring expenditures. In the same way, you can't pay for your dinner every night with borrowed money, because eventually you're going to have no credit left. And then you have a big hole in your budget. You can borrow money to buy a house because a house is going to last you for a lifetime. But you can't borrow money for dinner. Well, bankruptcy is, first of all, states can't file bankruptcy constitutionally. Cities can, in those states which have specific laws that authorize it.
Can countries file for bankruptcy?
No. Well, I don't know what the laws are in other places. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you, but the United States can't file for bankruptcy because they can print money. Mm-hmm. Germany printed money. That's what led to the Nazis, right?
Right.
Your history, the wild inflation that occurred in the Weimar Republic, which is what made Hitler possible. So, we're in serious trouble. Do I think the banks have a responsibility? I think the responsibility, which is not being exercised, which is conspicuously and irresponsibly being ignored, is the responsibility of the federal government. The SEC has no jurisdiction over the issuance of municipal securities. They should have. There was an amendment passed some years ago called the Tower Amendment, which everybody in the municipal bond business loves, because they don't have to deal with the SEC. So there's no regulation, except in the case of fraud. So rating agencies have their own way of looking at things, and basically their view is eventually the dog will talk. And they're right in the sense that so far there haven't been that many instances in which bondholders have been dramatically cut. It's happening in Detroit, for sure. It's happening in some cities in California. But nobody wants to tell the story of what's happening in hundreds upon hundreds of other cities around the country that are just cutting education, cutting infrastructure spending, cutting everything they possibly can, even reducing workforce. Camden, New Jersey has no police force anymore.
Wow.
I could go on and on. But I made the major point. Is that primarily the fault of the banks? No. It's primarily the fault of the politicians. The ineffable temptation to kick the can down the road. And the lack of courage and understanding and a willingness to take the political hit of becoming responsible for your consequences has put, in my view, the American public in great jeopardy.
When creating a new budget plan, what factors do you need to consider? And is there a way to satisfy everyone and still get the job done?
You have to cut expenses and raise revenues till you reach the point where your current expenses are covered by your current revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Not very complicated.
If it's so simple, why aren't cities
Because
or
it's too
countries doing
painful.
it? Okay.
It's too painful
For whom?
for the politician.
Mm-hmm.
You know anybody who got elected recently by advocating more taxes?
Fair point.
Well, first of all, I have no experience based on what they've done for Greece or Italy or anywhere else, so I can't talk with any confidence about that. But to the extent that banks have lent money to cover operating deficits or cause the issuance of municipal securities to cover operating deficits, they have done a disservice to our country. Help aiding and abetting the politician that doesn't want to face the music and tell the truth.
Right.
And tax enough to cover the cost that he wants to incur, or she. I'm still involved in Detroit. I'm advisor to the bankruptcy judge in Detroit. I'm doing a lot of studies and speaking on this subject. Because it fascinates me. It's fascinated me since I left being lieutenant governor in New York. I found New York State was guilty of the very things that they shouldn't be. They take contributions to the pension system in the form of promissory notes. They take money out of the state insurance fund to cover operating deficits. This is not fiscal prudence. This is kicking the can down the road in the hopes that the dog will talk. And if it doesn't, we're going to be in deep doo-doo.